Now for the first time on TV, the stories and reports of the people who fly and the aircraft they fly. And you are invited in an exciting, pulse-pumping new television series designed for everyone who has ever gazed skywards and dreamt of slipping the bonds of Earth. The Aviators.
This week on The Aviators, we give you a look inside one of the most advanced air traffic control towers in the world. We check out a small-town air show, Quesnel Skyfest. We walk you through a walk-around inspection. And we talk to legendary bush pilot and TV host John Lovelace.
Yeah, well, my love of airplanes actually started in high school.
From the Boundary Bay Airport, this is The Aviators.
Almost all of us have taken a flight to one of the world's major airports. Air traffic control is responsible for the safe movement of aircraft all around the world. One of the most recognized symbols of air traffic control is a control tower. Today, The Aviators is going to take you behind the scenes.
Air traffic control is a vital part of keeping the skies safe and people moving across the continent. NAV Canada, the group responsible for air traffic control in Canada, operates 7 area control centres and 41 airport air traffic towers across the country. These towers and control centres handle almost 6 million aircraft movements annually. Today we are taking you inside the tower of Toronto's Pearson International Airport, the busiest airport in Canada. The Aviators' own Curtis Arnold is an air traffic controller with NAV Canada. Curtis spoke with fellow air traffic controller Gary Hines, who works at the Toronto Tower.
Air traffic controller essentially is to make sure planes stay apart. We ensure safe separation of airplanes from the time they leave the gate to the time they get airborne and to the time they reach their destination. We make sure that planes taxi when they taxi along the ground. We do so with instructions. They taxi to and from the runway, and landing and takeoff clearance is also provided. We basically are the start of your trip and the end of your trip.
Worldwide, air traffic is controlled by 2 types of facilities. Radar stations, known as en route or area control centers, monitor the majority of air traffic, while airport towers monitor traffic within a control zone around an airport.
The control zone around Toronto is 7 nautical miles, and we work up to 2,500 feet above sea level. So basically with our elevation, we go about 2,000 feet above the ground, and that's our airspace. Every airplane and vehicle that enters our taxiways and runways has to have permission to do it. Any vehicle has to have permission to come on because the pilots are very busy in preparing for flight or at the end of their flight, and we take away that added stress and responsibility. We watch out for the pilots.
The tarmac of an airport is divided into several distinct sections. The apron is the paved area directly around the terminal, gates, and hangars of the airport. From here, airliners move out onto the taxiways, which are the roadways of the airport. Taxiways connect and intersect with various runways around the airport. Within the control tower, there are a number of positions that coordinate movement around these different areas.
Typically we run 5 positions up here with the supervisor. We have one ground controller here. He basically will work this half of the airport from where we're standing, what you see facing south towards the city. And again, we also have our other north ground controller to my right and works everything from this part to the north. From that point, the ground person will hand that off to our tower controller. We take the airport and we divide it in half. One tower controller who deals with landing and taking off of one runway. The other tower controller is seated to the south side here, and he works the landing and departing runway down there.
Coordinating takeoffs and landings is one of the crucial parts of an air traffic controller's job. Aircraft routinely have to land on a runway that another aircraft took off from just moments before. The tower controller has to ensure that these aircraft have a safe separation between them.
We have a plane that will have to, what we call, line up on the runway. They'll have to taxi onto the runway, get ready for departure, while we still have another arrival coming in. And that arrival could be as close as 4 or 5 miles away. In the meantime, the tower controller is having the previous arrival clear the runway safely so that the departure airplane can then take off safely, which then would have a domino effect of having that next arrival land safely.
The Toronto Tower is unique as it's the first tower in the world to use an entirely paperless touchscreen control system. Traditionally, towers and area control centers use a combination of paper flight progress strips and computer software. In the Toronto Tower, flight strips are entirely computerized, allowing flights to easily flow between the various tower positions. Gary gave us a closer look at how the system works.
This display here is for our tower controller who's working the north runway right now. So we see this screen here is all the arrivals landing. in Toronto, proposed within the next 10 to 15 minutes on the north runway. And we also have the information that the airplanes are landing on the south runway. This part here shows us that the plane is lining up on the runway, ready to take off, and momentarily that plane will be cleared for takeoff and will be shown here. Right now, this airplane on our ground radar is this yellow dot right here and has been cleared for takeoff and will accelerate down the runway. Once this plane departs the runway, we will then see it show up on our airborne radar and it will be tracked out of Toronto.
The Airborne Radar has a range of 12 miles. This includes some overlap with airspace that's controlled by the en route control centers. As aircraft are coming into land, they transition in much the same way from one radar screen to another.
So what we see here is, for example, a WestJet 528. He's 2 miles final from landing on our north runway, runway 05. And this shows us that he's a Boeing 737. He's at an altitude of 1,300 feet, and right now he's doing 140 knots. So as we transition from WestJet landing on this runway here, we'll see a target land develop right here momentarily, and that'll be him tracking down the runway, which is in black here. All these gray areas are taxiways, which are used for planes taxiing to and from the runway, either ending or starting of their trips.
So the controllers just cleared WestJet to land?
As we can see, he's rolling out and decelerating down the runway here.
So some of our viewers that may be a little bit familiar with air traffic control may be familiar with the concept of a flight strip. Can you explain what that's about?
This is the only information that we need to be able to move that airplane safely, either to the runway or away from the runway. His call sign is WestJet 528, airplane type, and that's the gate he's going to, C24.
Air traffic control is an extremely stressful job. While Toronto's systems may make things seem like a video game, each of those dots on the screen represents a very real aircraft weighing hundreds of thousands of pounds and with hundreds of people on board. The job takes months of training, and controllers are required to very strictly follow various regulations. But according to Gary, it's a job he would easily recommend to anyone.
I would absolutely recommend this job to a lot of people. Would I do this job again? In a minute. I love this job. I think it's one of the best jobs going. We have a great environment. We have technology that is world class. We have a great group of people that we all work together with. And this is my office. I come to this every day. What don't you love about this? Out the window, you have great sceneries. You have phenomenal sunsets and sunrises. You see thunderstorms coming. You see airplanes that you wonder how can they get in the air holding 350 people on a 15-hour flight going overseas to Japan or China, and you wonder how can that thing get in the air? And it does. And it's actually very amazing.
The Aviators, for everyone who has ever gazed skywards.
For more information on today's segments, visit www.theaviators.tv.